Hello and welcome to Group Chat. I'm Justin Verrier, and joining me, Rob Mahoney, Big Woz. Guys, I think we need to have a team meeting.
Do we?
Rob, you have been no more than 5 minutes late to these Zooms in perpetually for a
3
little bit
years
now.
and a half years.
You're
Okay,
disrupting our chemistry. Big fella, this can't happen.
First of all, whoever leaked that, you're a piece of shit. I want to say that off the top. Second, this is slander. This is libel if you want to put it in print. I would say 5 minutes is like my zone. I am a categorical 5 minutes late kind of person, and it brings me no joy to say that, but also let me say this. You guys are both flexing your privilege in terms of being able to have your podcasting setups fully assembled at all times. I'm out here reconstructing it every day in my closet to try to get you guys the best audio fidelity possible. Today, that wasn't a problem, and guess what? We're right on time.
Those San Francisco rents don't permit him to have a desk, y'all. That's what
the
Rob
thing.
is saying.
This is a housing issue.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying it's the elephant in the room. I just felt like we should talk about it.
That's it.
I appreciate
That's
you
right.
calling it out.
Okay. We'll be better going forward. Today we're doing a typical thing we do every year, 1 month in, going through a survey, superlatives, whatever you want to call it. Just don't call it awards because it's not that.
Nope.
Best team, best player. But I think we have to start with the most important one we have on our list, which is the biggest disappointment. I assume we all agree who that is, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers. They brought everybody back last night, Rob. Didn't matter because they all looked hurt, and then Paul George actually got hurt even more. Same injury he had before. This is a goddamn mess.
Complete mess. They lost to the Grizzlies, who not only didn't have John Morant, but didn't have 4 other rotation players, and just looked outclassed. And to have the wind taken out of your sails so quickly in what was supposed to be the first game of the proper Big Three era in Philadelphia, it's painful to watch in a season that was already extremely painful to watch on a nightly basis. And we can take this any number of directions that we want, because everyone, basically outside of Jared McCain, has looked bad for Philadelphia when they have played or coached or done anything in association with that franchise right now. But I think Joel Embiid is kind of the natural place to start because he technically had his best game, and I left it feeling no more confident about his ability to like literally move right now.
I don't even know where to begin with this. When the report comes out that they're having a closed door meeting, not even 20% into the season, automatically your antennae go up. And the idea that Joel Embiid is being called out, I think is important, honestly, because listeners to this show will remember that I thought it was bad that he was signaling that, like, I'm taking the regular season easy. I'm going to ease into coming back. All that matters is that we get far in the playoffs. Like, that's ultimately what I'm going to be judged on. I'm going to just cruise into what it is that we're doing this year. I thought that was a bad sort of thing to signal in a year as important as it is. And most importantly, because this is a brand new construction of your team. Like, you don't just bring Paul George in and think that it's like this seamless thing that he doesn't need to be integrated in, that you don't need to do on the floor. And also, like, the thing that informed my opinion of that was the last time Paul George joined a big-ass team, which is the Clippers, where they did take this approach to the regular season where it's like, look, we're going to pick our spots. We're really talented. All that matters is the playoffs. And then when they got punched in the mouth in the playoffs, they had no answers because they never developed anything to lean back on in the regular season. And so I thought that was problematic. And for one of his own teammates to come out and say, look, man, your approach, which is basically it's not like, oh, like you need to be 10 minutes early to every single thing that we do, Joel, but it conveys an attitude of blasé to what the operation is doing. And obviously that approach isn't working. And I don't think it's coincidental that Joel Embiid already has had his best game of the season directly after that meeting.
Yeah, I think there are two things here. I think it's Joel's limitations based on his body.
Yes.
And to a certain extent, I get it. If this is all he's capable of doing, if he can't do back-to-backs, then just the reality of the situation, he's so good when he does play that you just have to roll with it. I think the problem is, one, now that he is back, he just doesn't look right. So even the games that you've gotten from him, he's looked slow and sluggish. And on top of that, he's still doing some of the Harden-esque, let me just like manufacture trips to the line bullshit. And if anything, that's getting worse. The play where Jaren Jackson was on the ground and he tried to fake being tripped by him was my point where I was like, I think I'm fucking out on this in perpetuity. Like, it's just a mess. And it's kind of like outside of basketball in a way that I wonder if his teammates are looking at it. Like, dude, what are you doing? Because I think that was what everyone watching that game was saying. And then on top of that, it is what guys around him and how they feel about that. The fact that it was Maxey, a guy who's been there, probably his longest star teammate he might have outside of Ben Simmons, who also didn't have a good relationship with Joel
Tobias
Embiid.
Harris erasure is crazy.
Yeah, come on.
That's insane.
Sorry for Tobias. I don't think he's covered himself in glory since leaving the bosom of Embiid. But like, it feels like he's wearing on people. It almost feels like he got away with things because he was a superstar. But now that he's not playing up to that, everyone's like, dude, can you get in line? He's lost the privileges probably that he had when he was just the MVP, frankly.
I agree that stuff does wear on people, especially over time, even if you're a superstar. And when you're not able to perform like an MVP caliber player, there's just less like tolerance for that kind of behavior and that kind of approach overall. That said, most winning teams in the NBA, specifically contending ones, end up with some sort of confrontation like this with some member of the organization. Like, these guys are not always model employees for this reason or that.
Sure.
Somebody's work ethic is always under question. I think the thing with Embiid is that there's been a kind of a consistent drumbeat about that in the background for a long time. And it just hasn't been as big of a deal because he's been so great. And if he's not going to be great, then he needs to be professional. Like, he needs to be able to participate in this team in a more meaningful way on like a functional basis.
Show up to the Zooms on time. Yeah.
Look, I want to clarify one thing, which is Rob Mahoney 5 minutes late time and NBA player running late time are not the same thing.
That's true.
NBA players
banter. It's actually kind of nice.
You know, I'm just trying to give you guys the space to talk amongst yourselves.
There you go.
But yeah, I say that with no knowledge of like how late Embiid is running, but these things that tends to be measured in hours with NBA players, not minutes.
And we want to, be clear to the audience. Like, winning is the ultimate elixir. It cures
completely
everything. If these guys were 12-2 and Embiid was late and doing his typical blasé routine, and if you guys will remember, before he went out last season, where he was scoring at rates we haven't seen since Michael freaking Jordan in 1988. Like, if he was playing like he played last season, first of all, they'd be winning way more games and nobody would really care. But it's just like, you have to read the room. You have to have some situational awareness. You can't be 2-7 and be running around like nothing is wrong. And you're the best team. And they just extended you for $200 million over 3 years this past offseason. Like, bro, it's your team. And if you're treating your thing like you don't give a damn, okay, like that's how everybody else is gonna treat it. Like, it's almost like you go to somebody's crib, and we know those people, right? Like, as soon as you step in, you gotta take your shoes off. As soon as they hand you a drink, they're putting a coaster right underneath it. You eat a cookie and you see a crumb fall on the floor, you're like, oh shit, I gotta pick this up, right? Like, they're setting the tone for how you're supposed to treat their house. Joel Embiid is setting the opposite tone, and I think he should be getting killed for it, and rightfully so.
Well, I do have some bad news, which is the Sixers are not 2-7 anymore. They're now 2-12 with the worst record in the entire league.
Yeah.
Completely miserable on offense to this point. And granted, that has been with significant injuries. And this is where I want to be a little bit delicate about how we talk about Embiid's on-court play, because there's the part of it where this is clearly a guy who is still injured and who just looks tentative, looks like he cannot launch off that leg. Does not look like the healthy Joel Embiid, or at least the healthier version that we've seen over the past couple of years when he's been really like thriving and at his best. there's probably also the part of that where he doesn't look like he's in NBA condition. And there's also the part of it where he is doing this stuff on the floor, as you alluded to, Justin, where for a guy who's hurt, maybe trying to deliberately trip over a guy on the ground to draw a foul is like not the move at this point in time. Maybe settling for threes and airballing them is not the move at this point in time. Maybe staying in a double team for so long you have to hook shot a three from the corner is not the move. And again, this is all from his best game. Like I really don't even know what to say other than this is not good enough from Joel Embiid. And the rest of the Sixers clearly have not been good enough to make up for whatever it is that is ailing him right now.
Yeah, I watched that game last night, and my thought was, are we going to just have a repeat of what happened last year, where we shamed Joel to come back in, and he hurt himself even more? And now maybe it was his own teammates doing the shaming as much as it was just the audience and us. But he seemed like he was on the verge of just like spinning out, and him tripping over himself. You're right. I was like, what are you doing if you're taking it easy, but then you're just like jumping on the floor? Like, that's not going to help matters. I think the problem on top of that is Maxey also looked like he shouldn't have been out there. He played 5 minutes in the first half and then played like a pretty typical minute load in the second half. He didn't play the second quarter. Joel played the entire third quarter, despite what we're saying. And then Paul George leaves early in the third quarter because he actually re-injured himself. And so it's like, I don't know where this gets better, because it seems like they are clearly gripping the steering wheel pretty tight right now, and they're trying to rush guys back. And if they don't have two of them at full speed, we've seen how bad it can get. And so I don't know. I'm getting flashbacks to like some of the worst early season returns we've had in recent years. And the one that keeps coming to mind is the "now this is going to be fun" Lakers. Now, that was a lot of older guys, because Steve Nash was on that team and he was at the end of his rope. Kobe also older.
Yeah.
Dwight just was Dwight and nobody liked him. But it seems like what ends up felling these teams, what ends up undercutting them, is injuries. And I don't know how they spin out of this like kind of chaos spiral they're in right now.
It just seems to me that even with the limited Joel and Maxey, that they should be able to provide returns that are better than the Wizards.
Yep.
You know, that are better than the Nets.
The bench isn't that bad, too.
Well, but they've been that bad.
They've played poorly. Yes.
They have. That's what's confusing is there are a lot of players.
Sixers are the worst offense in the NBA.
It's wild.
It's crazy to think about. And there's a bunch of things layered into that. Joel Embiid being out, clearly chief among them. Tyrese Maxey, when he was healthy, not being able to scale up in the way that kind of supporting stars are often asked to do. Granted, Paul George was also out for a significant amount of time. Eric Gordon does not look playable. The rotation is finally starting to reflect that. I thought Ricky Council, like his energy and cutting in this game against the Grizzlies was such a breath of fresh air, because so many guys among that supporting cast just don't really move the way that you need them to move. Yep. Andre Drummond, I thought I made the mistake of thinking his rebounding alone might make him kind of helpful for this team. It has not. He's been quite poor in terms of his actual returns. I think Yabusele has been the one exception in terms of the new guys they brought in, who's actually looked pretty good, and he needs to play more, frankly, is part of the issue.
And McCain.
Well, McCain is
his heart out.
McCain is his own category. I think McCain, far and away, the best of the new edition Sixers. And even among the guys that they brought back, like Kelly Oubre has struggled. Kyle Lowry, I think, has been okay, but is 38 years old. And you can't really expect him to be more than 38-year-old Kyle Lowry. So who are you supposed to turn to in these situations if you're the Sixers?
And Paul George was never going to be like this dominant offensive force for them, by the way. Like, he was always going to be sort of additive to everything that Joel and Maxey had established as a two-man last year. Now, if Joel was going to miss time, him and Maxey were going to have to learn some stuff, kind of advance, quite quickly, their chemistry. But, like, everybody's been gone. And, yeah, I don't think Paul George is going to come back and just start killing people. I just don't think that's who he is at this point. I think he's supposed to be just a supercharged third option, in a way that's just like he's way overqualified to do what Toby Harris was doing. But, he's coming now. He's got a bad knee. He couldn't turn the corner on guys last year.
Exactly.
And his knee is cooked. Ooh. Lord have mercy.
That was the kind of sneaky secret about Paul George's hyper efficient season last season. Part of that was he just wasn't as aggressive getting to the basket anymore. And I didn't think he was going to get more aggressive when he was joining this team where presumably Maxey was going to take the lead on a lot of that driving into the gut of the defense sort of stuff. He's just perplexing in his own right. And then I think we have to talk about the Nick Nurse piece of this all.
Oh, the Reddit conspiracy?
I don't even know if it's a Reddit conspiracy so much as it seems pretty likely, given the type of quotes that he gives, that he might have been the one leaking this information to Shams. By the way, Nick Nurse is a Clutch Sports client. Shams obviously has a big relationship with them. If that's the case, like, then somehow this explosive situation can get even more explosive, I think.
I'm trying to figure out what the Justin Verrier turn of phrase is when you leak something about the group chat podcast to ESPN.
Calling someone a C word.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Honestly, that might be it.
But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Joel's post-game press conference in Memphis, he also didn't like really take the blame. Like, if anything, he was like, "Yeah, I was late, but you know, I was hurt, so it's not that big of a deal." Like,
he also did the like, "Oh, because it's a Joel Embiid story, of course we're gonna blow it out of proportion." It's like, you're the superstar of a franchise with contending aspirations. Everything you do is a big deal. And the fact that he doesn't grasp that, or he's poking at it in a way as to say, like, look at how ridiculous this is.
No, it's a story because the story came out. You're 2-11, Joel.
Yep.
That's why it's a story. You're 2-11. You have the worst record in the NBA. It's a story. Like people thought that you might beat Boston to go to the championship. Like, that's why it's a story. It's not because it's Joel Embiid. So every time I sneeze or scratch my ass, like, people report about it. It's like, nah, dog. You guys are playing horrifically. And the idea that, you know, like, no blame should be ascribed to Joel and how you go about your business is crazy. And yeah, look, I do think it's messed up that the stuff leaked, even as a media member. I think that kind of thing where, like, the actual details of what was said and not just conveying like, yo, there was a serious tone.
Right.
People called each other out, whatever. But to be like, yeah, they called him out for being late. Like, the part where they said, like, where it's like, and I think everybody latched onto this was like, well, you know, what is he late to? It's like everything. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. Everything, that's crazy. You know, and I can understand why he could feel blindsided by this. Like, yo, we was having a real moment. To have this spill out into the public kind of sucks. And I tend to agree with him on that. But at the same time, like, the stuff that comes out makes you look horrible, bro.
Well, when you hit this sort of early season 2-12 kind of adversity, there are the people who are in the room having the closed door meeting, trying to figure out constructively, like, how do we solve this? And then there are the people who are like looking for the lifeboat. And when these leaks happen, it's usually people looking for, like, I'm looking for a lifeboat.
My fault.
Not my. I am abdicating responsibility. I did my part. I'm observing how ridiculous this is. I'm judging Joel Embiid's behavior.
Y'all see this shit?
Classic. Y'all see this shit. Who among us is not above an occasional y'all see this shit? But it's not going to help the Sixers be any better. That's for sure.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Waz too, where it's like the offenses that Joel was kind of dinged for are fairly minor, especially in the NBA. I just think also after you shoved a reporter like a couple days ago, bro. Also not the time to really be taking the higher ground. And so
is it? Like, we're not even talking about the shoving of a reporter anymore.
Just push that off of the front page. And we just have your poor play to talk about. Yeah, so I don't know. I think this franchise might be cursed. They haven't had a normal season since they traded Drew Holiday to start the process, which was like 10 years ago more? I think it was like 2012 maybe.
Is there a Drew Holiday hex? Maybe it's not a Sixers thing. It's just a Drew Holiday.
Yeah,
like,
you trade Drew Holiday and you're cooked. New Orleans. Look at New Orleans. Oh my God.
He's a God guy, you know? Maybe he's sick on him.
I don't think that's how hexes work necessarily, but sure.
He got traded summer of 2013. Hasn't been good since.
Yikes.
Isaiah Joe's just out here cooking now that he's outside of the process. You know, it could be the case. That's all I'm saying. Do you think this gets better Like, do we think we're talking playing here?
It's
Playoffs?
absolutely going to be better. I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to play 82 games at a 2-12 pace. Like, so it's going to be better because it has to. Like, there's just no way to be this horrible going forward. But like, in terms of them figuring out how to be a functional team that makes sense and has a reason for being in terms of what they do on a like possession by possession basis, like that they're gonna get this down pat by the playoffs. I don't see it, dog. We might be running this back to next year.
Yeah.
To them being like, oh, we got a full training camp, Joel is right, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I think this year might be done.
It could be in a vibe sense. There's a lot of time to get things right. There's a lot of time to iron things out. There's a lot of time to forget about all this shit by March. But I would not be surprised if it hangs over them for a while. I think the only thing really working in their favor is the fact that the East and the bottom of the East is so bad.
So terrible.
Right now, there are 3 teams tied for 8th place in the East.
Yep.
They are currently on a 33-win pace for the season. I think the Sixers, for as bad as they've been, can win 33 games. And if that's all it takes to just get in the play-in door, see what happens. You got Joel Embiid, hopefully healthy by then. You've got Paul George, hopefully healthy by then. You got Tyrese Maxey.
The Sixers have a chance to win 37 games this year, folks. Lord.
Look, that's where the bar is. That's where the bar is right now.
Yeah, he could trip his way to at least like 15 wins, I would think. Embiid fake trip his way.
Okay.
They're currently 3.5 games back of 10th right now, and in 10th technically, but it is a 3-way tie as Rob mentioned. The Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
What a fucking shit stew this Eastern Conference is. Good Lord. All right, let's get to something a little bit more cheery here. Let's do best player. I have to assume we all agree on this one.
Yeah.
It's Dalton Knecht. No, it's Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I don't really see an argument for anybody else. Like, we can go into some honorable mentions if we want, but right now, the Nuggets offense is swinging by 34 points with whether Jokic is on the floor or not. 34 points.
That's insane.
From the best offense in the league to far and away the worst. They are barely functional without him out there. And look, the conversation about like how much responsibility, how much help star level players has, I think can always get very thorny in an MVP kind of context. But watch the Nuggets play and tell me this guy is not carrying this entire team on his back right now. Tell me he's not the most sophisticated creator and playmaker that's working. It's all of that coming together. It's the responsibility, it's the skill, it's the talent, it's the fact that he's having a great individual season. Like the numbers, the impact, a guy who's nails in crunch time. He lifts up every single player around him. I would love to hear a compelling case for anybody else, but I don't think there's one out there.
Man, it's just funny how time flies when, you know, there was a time where we were having conversations about Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic and who is it? Who's the better player? Who would you rather have? It's not even contested.
Yeah, Woz, for the record, you and I were not having that discussion, Woz. That was asked and answered for us.
Joel, okay, let's walk that one back. Joel was quite good the past
He's very
season.
good. But I
Someone actually made the comparison between Deron Williams and Chris Paul, and that like this is the division.
Deron Williams?
Whatever, I don't. He doesn't deserve a full pronunciation.
Darren Williams in his retirement does deserve the pronunciation of his name.
Dallas got to step up for Dallas there.
That's
Justin.
right.
You know what that is.
Protecting their own.
Yeah, the colony's own Darren Williams.
And obviously this is a different context, right? But when the season started and, you know, even I was like semi-panicking, like, what the fuck is going on with this supporting cast? And Jokic was openly complaining about not having shooting or whatever. Jokic did the thing that he is not hardwired to automatically do, which is just hog the glory, hog the shine, hog every possession, just be like, you know what? It's going to be the Nikola Jokic show. And he said, you know what? Fuck it. This is what my team needs in order for us to keep our season on track. And, you know, in terms of dominating possession and being the person that generates every single shot for this team, whether it's by his own hand or he's setting up some other teammate, he went out and he did that. And literally, as we mentioned before, you guys could go check out Zach Graham's article about it. He had the best 10-game stretch of his freaking career because that's what it called for in order for Denver to keep pace in a highly competitive Western Conference. And yeah, I like the scoring is just ridiculous. Like the one-on-one scoring, the 3-point shot is back. His head fake, where like just the fact that Jokic, when you look at him, he's a dribble drive threat is ridiculous. He's a fast break threat on every single rebound. It's just been nuts. He's ratcheted up all the things that have already made him an MVP 3 times over. And so, yeah, man, I think he's been the best player to start the season.
Averaging a 30-point triple-double right now, leading the league in rebounds, leading the league in assists. I believe he's leading the league in 3-point percentage at 56%.
Good Lord.
Pretty good. He has had, the benefit of missing 3 games right now, which for personal reasons. So I think we're getting close to where he might not be eligible if we wanted to say that. Mm-hmm. But I think he's far and away the leader here. I think in the conversation would be Anthony Davis. Mm-hmm. The Lakers have looked good of late, at least offensively. Still pretty bad defensively, but he is not the reason why. 31, 11, and 3. Best season of his career. Getting to the line at ungodly rates at this point. We'll see if that continues. Probably will.
A more willing jump shooter, which I think has helped too.
Yeah, he's having the best start of his career that I can remember.
Definitely.
And then Jason Tatum, who
Hell yeah.
Best player, best team, and clearly the best player in a way that he probably hadn't really stepped forward as in years past. 38-6, 46, 40, 81 on the splits. He's been electric for a team we're probably going to talk about in a little bit here is probably the best team in the league, or certainly among them. So
yeah.
Any other guys?
I just on the Tatum bit, like, and we had talked to Zay about this, like this idea that Jason Tatum can't shoot anymore. I'm glad that's been just completely dispensed. Like this guy has been a premium shooter since the day he stepped in the NBA. Yes, he had a weird blip in the playoffs and for Team USA, but like I'm glad that's back and he's hunting it. I just think he's so much smarter about his shot diet now, man. Like it's just way more like take what the defense gives you, except in spots where it's like, no, I'm going to force the issue on this drive here and I'm going to draw some help. I'm going to kick. He's just he's unlocked the mental part of the game in a way that, had always been kind of lagging with his beautiful physical gifts in the past. And it's just obvious. He's playing the best ball of his career. And this is not like last year when they were like, oh, Tatum's an MVP candidate because his team has the best record. No, he's playing like one of the 3 best players in the NBA right now. He's playing at that level. And I'm sorry, Celtics fans, he did not play this well in the finals. He did not play this well in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think it's okay to say that he's elevated his play.
Elevation.
Like that is a compliment to Jason Tatum to say that this is the best version of him we've ever seen. And I think a lot of it is what you mentioned about him understanding when and how to force the issue and his dynamism, his ISO work. Like he's been awesome creating offensively this season in a way that is a little not uncharacteristic for the Jason Tatum of old, but is evolved. And I think him taking that step forward has been super meaningful for that team, especially when there's so many players on the Celtics who, like Derek White, doesn't want to force the issue. Drew Holiday does not want to force the issue. Jaylen Brown, sure, you have to rein in occasionally from maybe forcing a little too much, but
he's an issue forcer.
But they need that from him too. Like there are guys on your team who are called upon to do this in the way that we're saying Jokic has been called upon to do this. And Tatum being not just willing to do it, but really skilled and really careful in how he's going about it, I think is a huge reason why the Celtics have been so dominant.
Yeah. So if I had a ballot for this fake 1 month in best player of the month award, I would do Jokic, AD, Tatum, Shea, and probably Giannis.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Connect doesn't make it, but there's a long season ahead of us.
Bron tried to tell y'all. Bron tried to tell y'all, man. He watched so many Tennessee games, man. Y'all
wasn't lying about that.
Y'all didn't want to believe it. Shouts to Alex Haley, man, and the autobiography of Malcolm X. If Bron want to figure out why people don't believe his ass, he can go back to that right there.
We're storming out of Twitter because everyone was mad at him that he got caught lying like a shit ton of time. I'm just like I can't do it, man.
I need someone listening to this podcast to keep a running tally over the course of the season as to the random shout outs that Woz has given, including today to the autobiography of Malcolm X.
That was my one because
Oh, it's the go-to for this for sure.
It was in the bubble. It was I think it was Taylor Brooks who asked him. It wasn't even like, yo, like, what did you think about when, Malcolm X went to Saudi Arabia and did his pilgrimage to Mecca, and like he hung out with all these Sunni Muslims and he changed his militant blood. Like, no. It was, what's your takeaway? Early takeaways. We do it on this pod all the freaking time. And he didn't have one.
I want to say he did have one, and it was, I may be paraphrasing, forgive me if the quote is wrong, but that he was a great man, or something to that. There were like 8 greats.
He's not wrong, though.
He's not wrong.
Not wrong.
But
that's a good take. That's a podcast take.
That is
right
a podcast take.
How long until we get LeBron on Blue Sky?
Oh, I don't know. He might be burned out on engagement at this point.
Blue Sky might break if that happened.
KingJames.Social. I'll follow him. All right, best team.
Yeah, it's the Boston Celtics.
For me, it's the Celtics. It's definitely the Celtics. It's because that Cavs game, right now. That Cavs game was a great reminder in that first half, where I think the Celtics, obviously, like the offense is a given at this point. Like the proof is in the pudding. The sample size is what it is. Like they are an offensive juggernaut. I've come to expect that. But the way they got Cleveland out of their shit and forced them to be more matchup hunty, more, basic pick and roll with Garland and Mitchell, just so one-dimensional and predictable. The fact that their defense could dictate that to the team that was undefeated and best offense in the league, like the best offense in the league is getting so thoroughly thrown off of their game. To me, Boston is showing you, like, yeah, we're juggernaut on offense, but we're also that shit on defense too. They're the most well-balanced team in the NBA. Like, I don't think you can argue that. They came out with some playoff intensity, and they smacked the Cavs in the mouth for that first half. Now, granted, I love the Cavs' response, showing that they're not the same team from last year. They got back to their cutting, more unpredictable nature of the offense. What I was excited about is I text you guys in the group chat, Evan Mobley not letting little guys guard him.
Let's go.
Like, get out of here. Elbow to your fucking grill, man. Derek White, get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm beating these little dudes up. I love that. That's what I was really excited about. But I think right now, you can't say that the Cavs are to the level of the Celtics just yet. But the fight back that they had, the adjustments that they made in the second half, I was encouraged by it. But for my money, you still got to take the Celtics as the best team in the league.
I think it's 3 things for me. One, the benefit of the doubt that comes with their playoff success and knowing exactly what the Celtics team is does give them a slight edge over even an incendiary start from the Cavs. 2, I think the Celtics are just like an absolute buzzsaw, and not just by elite record, by the fact that they destroy other high-level teams. And the Cavs have been good against high-level teams. This is maybe an area where the Thunder drop a little bit in this conversation. They just haven't quite measured up in some other like higher leverage matchups so far. The Celtics, that's never a question. And that's the third part of this, which is there are games when you watch Boston play where the other team just has no chance, where they take and make a number of threes that just blows people off the floor. And they're so good at creating high quality shots in that way that it's like, they're just going to be a certain number of games they win by default this season. And that to me is that spells dominance.
We're not going to do best coach in this, but I have to say, I think Woz might be in the running because I'm like ready to run through a fucking wall after that speech right there. Fucking Malcolm X of podcasting right here, of NBA podcasting. So I split this into like 4 different groups basically because I feel a certain way about 4 different teams that I think are in this conversation. Best body of work, if we're just looking at the resume, it's probably the Cavs.
Sure.
First in point differential, first in net, first in offense. Like, they've lost one game, and that was to the Celtics, but that probably is the deciding factor.
On the
here.
road, like
on the road.
Tough.
True.
Tough.
They have been incredible thus far.
Yes.
I would say the team I've been most impressed with in this category, the Warriors, just because they've kind of pushed my wig back. I didn't think they still had this in them. That's probably more surprise than best, and so we'll get to them in a little bit.
You stepping on your freaking categories.
I know. This is bad hosting. most potential to eventually get into this mix, I think, is OKC. Unfortunately, they just keep bleeding 3-point shooters. But the fact that Isaiah Hartenstein was back out there last night, it's like there's a whole different level to this team
like a man
that they
out
haven't
there,
gotten
bruh.
to. Yes. He already looked good, doesn't disrupt the flow that they're playing with. The handoff stuff is going to be beautiful. Like,
Seamless.
they're number one with the bullet on defense, and we've talked about their defense at length, so we don't have to go into it here. But, like, those are some goddamn dogs. And so if they get the offense to match that, I think they could be really, really, really,
Chet
really
comes
good.
back and Hartenstein is in there. They're going to be formidable in terms of their balance for sure.
Completely.
Hartenstein is a great, 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 great man.
He is. We all agree. Did you see the
agree.
behind the back passes last night? He was wheeling and dealing.
He's going to be unlocked in a way that he probably hasn't been at previous stops, and I'm here for that.
Yeah.
But best team, I agree with you guys. It's
And just
the
a
Celtics.
hero to just all young black kids out there, man, that you can start off as like, barely a rotational guy on the Clippers, make your way to New York, make a name for yourself, get a bag, and actually prove that you're worth it, man. This guy is he's a credit to his race for sure.
Tell him, Waz.
Land of opportunity. All right, should we get into biggest surprise now?
Yeah.
Rob, you want to go?
I think this is where your Golden State Warriors come up.
Factor.
I think so.
Yes.
It is incredible that this collection of players is top 10 on both sides of the ball. I am flabbergasted. I am amazed. All credit due, I think, to Mike Dunleavy and his staff for putting together the deepest Warriors team in years, and to Steve Kerr for managing like a really smart, deep rotation that puts all of those guys in positions to succeed. They just have a lot of players who know how to work without the ball and play smart positional defense. And guess what? That really pays off, it turns out, when you stack them 10 and 11 and 12 deep.
Yeah, I mean, I have two surprises here. One of them being the Warriors defense. I just didn't think that they would be able to get to these levels, which I think in 2022 is what ultimately catapulted them to the championship. Like, Steph obviously was Steph and sort of cemented himself as one of the greatest ever on an echelon with anybody you want to name. But the fact of the matter is, in that finals against Boston, they just guarded the hell out of these dudes. And that's the side of the ball that I think they ultimately won that championship on. And I just thought those days were long dead and gone. But this year, man, I'll be damned if Draymond Green, bruh, like, you can say whatever the hell you want about how much of a psychopath he is. And he is. Yeah. The shit that he did to Edie the other day was completely unhinged and like out of control. And like, why are you still doing this? But that defense goes because Draymond, man, it's not even just Draymond still having, the anticipation, his instincts for like what spot to be in and like which buttons to push. But he's also, what you don't really appreciate until you watch the Warriors in person, is he's like quarterbacking the defense from behind and barking out instructions like he's freaking Bill Belichick to his teammates that are on the floor with him.
Yeah.
Like he's telling them what to do. Yo, that guy's coming, do this. Yo, it's amazing what Draymond is doing, man. And so the Warriors defense definitely, one of my biggest surprises.
And it's no surprise in that way that, to your point about the Belichick comp, was like, if you have Buddy Hield, a guy who's never really been able to guard anybody, but he has an earpiece with Draymond Green in it. Like, Buddy Hield can move his feet, right? Yeah. Like, I think having someone bark those orders to get you in the right places, to get you organized, plus a collection of players that naturally, maybe Hield accepted, will play up and into people, right? Like, can apply pressure. That combination is really potent.
He's got the personnel this year because you do have guys like Gary Payton back in the mix there. Melton would have fit that. Unfortunately, he's not going to be with them for the rest of the season. But like, even Wiggins has showed a lot of oomph in a way that he hasn't in years past.
Best defensive intensity since 22.
Yeah. And I mean, Draymond isn't getting up as much to contest shots, but I do think like whatever vegan or like pescatarian sort of diet he's on, it's working because he looks leaner and he does. Yeah, exactly. He does look like he's a little bit more spry than he has in the past, but you're right, Waz. I think just the computer brain watching him organize things on the fly, like he could play like at this level for a couple more years just because his brain works in a way that nobody else's does. And so you got to give the Warriors a lot of credit here.
Also, that game against Dallas where like he was so tuned up, dude, and so ready to kick Klay Thompson's ass that game to prove to him, like, Clay, the reason why they took care of me financially, because I'm way better than you right now. Like, it just is what it is. Like, I can actually anchor a side of the ball, man. And Trace Jackson Davis, don't get it twisted. He's been good. Kuminga on defense. Like, these guys they're really believing. And, you know, of course, Steph Curry just being the other leader who is just setting a sort of tone of calm, never panic. Let's run our stuff. Let's get everybody involved. I couldn't imagine the Dubs would be this dope coming into the season.
I think they have a really great balance right now, too. To hit on, I think, what is becoming weirdly our theme of the day in terms of the balance of like when to press offensively versus when to facilitate. That's been a bit of a problem for the Warriors. Like Draymond has been centering that conversation for a long time. A guy who just like does not look for his own shot. And when you look across this roster, she's shooting it this year. And I think overall the combination of players that they have is a little healthier in terms of the guys who want to press and the guys who want to facilitate. And when you can get that to a point where Steph doesn't have to do it all the time, or as we saw last year, when Clay isn't the person calling upon himself to do it all the time, this is what the result of that stuff can be. And so up and down, you just have guys in the rotation that make sense, like guys who know their roles, who know how they play, and have good complementary talent around them.
I think we expected Jonathan Kuminga to be their second most important player this season, if not maybe third. He's probably 10th, 9th, somewhere deeper in the rotation.
Behind Kevon Looney, I would say.
Yeah.
Also, and why that's important is that they're winning. So it's not like they've de-emphasized him. It's just, bro, you're not that guy. You're just not going to be the guy who dominates possession and just cooks people with efficient offense, you know, just by your shot creation. They've given him the space to try, but I think he's sort of receded into the role of like, all right, I got to be more judicious about picking my spots. But if they weren't winning and this kid is trying to get his second contract, which is drilled into all of these dudes, you're playing for your second deal. The second you step into the NBA, everybody's telling you the deal that matters is that second deal. That's what's going to set the tone for your career. Right. And the fact that like it's not working the way I'm sure he thought it might, and he's still being a good soldier. It's beautiful what's happening in Golden State, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. Go do that shit against second units because that's where it's effective right now.
It just is what it is.
Can I rip through a bunch of like honorable mention surprises?
Yeah,
I have a couple too.
Second one. Yeah.
What do you guys have?
Mine is the Cavaliers offense and
Certainly.
Evan Mobley. That like, dude. Number one in the NBA in offensive efficiency, that was not on my bingo card coming into the year. I thought they would be improved. And Atkinson, you know, spent some time with Steve Kerr, a lot of that beautiful game.
Kumbaya, baby.
Listen, man, it's actually been injected into this offense. Donovan Mitchell, he gave the quote when after the Celtics game where he's like, I got into some of my older habits. I got to get off the ball. I got to stop being so thirsty to be this, you know, pick and roll dominant player. And the fact that Atkinson has coached it into these guys, they're like, yo, have trust that the ball will find you back. You know, you can do other things besides having the ball in your hand to put yourself in a position to score. That's been amazing. And then, you know, unlocking Evan Mobley as like, nah, dude, we're going to, like, in the playoffs, these teams are going to try to switch these little kids, these little wings, these little whippersnappers on you, and you got to beat them up, make them pay. And Mobley, and not only just that, just giving him more responsibility on the perimeter, empowering him to, you know, use his dribble game to attack guys. The offense has been the offense alone is why Kenny Atkinson is like coach of the year, number one with a bullet for me.
The only time someone has improved without a plant-based diet, you know, it actually came down to X's and O's and figuring this out. Yeah. I would like to nominate one Franz Wagner, who is good. It turns out.
Yeah.
He's making threes. And if anything, like the percentages are dipping because if you watch the Magic these days, God bless you, they are not an offense for the faint of heart. If last year was a sludge factory, them without Paulo is more like a sludge emporium.
Wow.
You know, this is sludgy land out there. It's like, it's a very, very, very tough watch. But he has looked about as good as you could hope for without the requisite amount of spacing, 23, 6, and 5. It just seems like he is activated in the way that I think you'd hope for. I think the shot does open things up for him, but he's just like, he's driving. He's within the flow of the offense. I've liked the pairing with him and Anthony Black. We were talking about this before we came on. I think he probably needs to get a little bit more run with Paolo out in that first unit because things do move with him in there. But like, Suggs has made progress as an offensive player for them. He's doing more, isn't particularly doing it well at this point. We'll see down the road, but it really is the Franz show. And he's kind of stepped up in Paolo's absence. They've been a very, very good team. They're now, I believe, third in the East, in part because he's basically carrying them and their defense has been so lock solid.
Yeah, he has to do a lot for them to work offensively. And there are games where it still doesn't, right? Where they make the right passes, they set up the right shots, and they just can't hit enough threes to really compete with some of these teams on offense. That's where having the number one defense in the league comes in. And that's where having Franz, who is a good defender in his own right, contributes to that, right? Like when your star is a two-way player in that kind of way, it changes a lot of things, even if they do have a super high usage. I think Franz has been super impressive as a lead guy, really and truly for the first time in his NBA career. That's been awesome to see.
He's earning that bread, thank God.
No doubt. Peyton Pritchard, top 10 in threes made this season so far. 6-man candidate out of thin air. Very impressive. Jakob Poeltl. I don't know if this is recency bias. Like, look,
I opened up Blue Sky for like the first time since I signed up the other day, and the
were
first
people
thing
talking about the
you,
wonders of libraries like they were in my freaking For You tab?
I didn't see that one,
okay.
But I did get fed Rob having a pretty like just tepid like, what's up with Jakob?
I'm trying to figure it out.
I was like, get me the fuck out of here. Let me go back to toxic ass Twitter to get away from these like just normal discussions.
Well, let me ask you, Justin Verrier, what is going on with Jakob Poeltl? Can you explain to me why he's averaging 30 and 15 on 72% shooting over 3 games randomly? Very recent among the body of work for the NBA season, but Jakob Poeltl becoming a relevant offensive factor has been startling and shaking to me to my core in a way that I'm trying to reconcile even still. We talked about Dyson Daniels a bunch already on this pod. He's clearly one of the big surprises of the season. Brooklyn's offense, 8th in offense right now.
That's crazy.
Still,
I remember unsustainable.
Unsustainable. But I remember us talking about the only way they might be even decent would be that it's a scrappy defensive bunch. That has not turned out to be the way that they're winning games right now. Nikola Vucevic, dude could not shoot straight for 3 years and now is shooting 50% from 3. Ben Mathurin, Tyler Hero, Jaren Jackson, Christian Brown. And I gotta say, a team that probably deserves a little bit more spotlight in this surprise capacity, the Houston Rockets, who I think was probably the biggest delta between where we had them in the preseason power rankings and where they are right now, even more so than the Cavs. So I think we thought the Cavs were going to be really
Especially
good.
With Justin had them for sure.
Absolutely.
The Rockets? Oh, yeah, I did have them below the Spurs. That's right. Okay, well, that's my mulligan then. I like them. I just didn't think they'd put it together this quickly.
Completely.
Yeah.
They've been awesome.
Also, my Jalen Green stock taking a hit. It's like I don't know if y'all saw Tesla went down by, a quarter. That's what it's felt like with Jalen Green these past 2
Jalen Green is
weeks.
the Tesla of NBA players.
Yeah, for
It's
me.
actually not a bad comp.
Yeah.
They zip around, no torque.
But if you look too closely, all of the installation is kind of like falling apart.
Yeah. Jalen Green has come back down to earth insofar as he was like in the orbit. But like, I think, Tari Eason and Thompson just as like defensive dynamos, like, when
They're like
defense.
the Mighty Ducks.
The Bash Bros?
The Bash Bros. Yeah, right?
I like
just
it.
Bullies who are actually just like kind dudes who just want to like come in and wreck shit up and wear leather jackets. Yeah.
See, the Bash Brothers is a wrestling reference for me.
Well, it's a baseball reference. It's an everything reference. But these are our Bash Bros. That's what's really important.
Are you worried a little bit about the Rockets? I worry it's like too much too soon in that I do wonder like for how long are Tari Eason and Men Thompson going to be cool with being like the spunky bench unit coming in to wreck things where it's like, I'm kind of the heart of this team. Like I'm actually what's behind a lot of the success we're having. Like, can I actually supplant Jalen Green in the starting lineup, especially because he's not long for this world based on the extension we gave him? Those sorts of things pop up when I think a young team is successful in a way that a veteran team is probably more used to. I don't know. It's more speculative than anything, but I'm keeping track of it.
I mean, Thompson's only in his second year. He doesn't become extension eligible until after year 3. So I would say all-star break of next year is when you need to start worrying about it. So 2026, we're good until 2026.
Yeah, I think those problems usually start to arise after the big breakout season, right? Like you get through the tremendous momentum and vibes of the opening gambit of everyone starting to pull together and starting to figure it out. And then you need to look around and say, okay, how am I getting mine within this very deep and complex ecosystem?
Yeah. There's just too much smoke around like, oh, the Rockets are in the mix, like KD, Giannis. It's just like, I don't love that that's popping up because that's not coming from nowhere. But we'll see. I love watching them. They're definitely like, if not top 3, then definitely top 5 in my league pass.
Yeah.
Preseason Mulligan. This is take you want back from the preseason. This one was tough for me because, as you guys know, I have no bad takes except for I guess the Rockets.
The Rockets. We literally just highlighted.
My Mulligan, I think, is not leaning into the fact that Tyrese Halliburton isn't very good.
Oh,
I didn't do that strong enough.
You wanted to say it more strongly.
You wanted to
I
say
wanted
it
to say it more with my chest, but there was so much blowback by floating it. I was a little tepid. But I think it's just a lesson to all y'all out there. It's just like believe in your random opinions that are largely based on just vibes. So, no, but he's been awful.
Tyrese Halliburton is still a good player, but has not played well. Like there's no defense of how he's played. There's no defense of the tentative way in which he has attacked or lack thereof. Like his complete disengagement with trying to actually advance the offense, I think has been a huge problem for them. I actually, my Mulligan is along these same lines, Justin, which I floated the idea that the Pacers could be potentially like a 50-win team this year.
Same.
That doesn't seem to be in the cards at all.
Mulligan is Pacers for me. I'm coming up. Yeah. We're all coming up Pacers for me. And for Halliburton, it's not just that he's not playing well. It's some of the off-court stuff is kind of concerning me. Wishing 50 Cent happy birthday, surrounded by like 3 6.5s. Like, what are you doing?
Jesus Christ.
Tyrese Halliburton. Like,
so you're saying he's not a master coxman?
It's just like
Jesus Christ.
I don't like what he's projecting, combined with the contract, combined with the severe decrease in production. It's like it's a nasty cocktail to me of that situation over there. And I think he's self-aware enough to know that, like, bro, I'm not playing up to what is expected of me right now. And the best players turn it around after hitting a blip. Maybe the league figures something out about you and you now have to make the adjustment to that adjustment. But that's the thing that worries me. It's like something feels off about what's emanating from the Tyrese Halliburton situation.
People
agree.
think it's a back issue.
Well, it is a back issue. Like,
do we know that definitively?
I mean, he fell hard on his back, has not played well ever since, looks very much like a guy with a bad back. And I think Kalen Cooper's been all over this all season so far, banging that drum. I think there's significant.
Last year? Or
no, this is separate.
January?
No, there's the hamstring thing last year. And then there's what appears to be a back thing this year, which, look, if we want to talk about Tyrese Halliburton's play, I think the home road splits are pretty instructive. Like, he is a completely different player on the road. And you can assign whatever causality to that you want, but he just hasn't been good enough. Like, I think there's a huge problem where defenses have just been able to slow the Pacers down a lot. And they slow Tyrese down a lot. They slow the overall movement of the offense down a lot. It has taken a lot of the possessions that used to be streaks right to the rim, and the Pacers were so good at getting to the rim last year, into walking possessions that never really develop and just kind of flounder and die on the vine. That's a big problem. Like, this team having to settle for so much mid-range offense when they are not built for it is a huge problem. Even Pascal Siakam is like probably one of the better mid-range shooters on the team, just hasn't really been good enough. And I think I expected their offense to carry over more year over year. I certainly expected Tyrese to be better than this. He hasn't been. I also thought they might make some progress on defense, and they have not. I think it's been really bad individual defensive effort, basically across the board, compounded by really bad team communication on defense. You're not going to win that way, even if you do score a lot. And the Pacers are not scoring a lot. So they need to change an awful lot, starting with getting healthy, but also just playing a lot better and being prouder in their like individual performance to make this work.
I think pace at this extreme level is an enhancement, is an augmentation of something. It cannot be your entire identity. And it just feels like they are easier to figure out, especially when Halliburton. Yeah, just like it just seems like, especially if he's not going to be the engine that he was at the beginning of last season, if he's hurt, whatever it may be, it seems very easy right now. And even Mathurin's playing electric at times. He's been great. They have some bright spots in there, but it just seems like they're reliant on a one-way approach based on just getting the ball up the court quicker and quick hits and all this other stuff. And I just don't think you could win consistently before the league catches up to that. That's all.
The best teams will get you out of that quick pace, will get you out of transition. Like, that's just been proven over time. Like, if you're heavily reliant on, a fast pace, it kind of reminds me of Chip Kelly with the Eagles, where like everybody was like, oh my God, he's revolutionized the game. And then the second go around, everybody's like, no, like we know how to guard this now. That's what it feels like with the Pacers as a team and Halliburton as a player, as a lead man. But they just have to be better in the half court, man. Like, you got to be able to attack teams in the half court if you consider yourself to be, like we're going to threaten for the Eastern Conference Finals again, or we're going to get out the first damn round this year. They have to be more surgical and deliberate in the half court than they've been.
I think the problem with this and why it's maybe an even bigger issue than the way we're kind of framing the conversation right now is this isn't a matter of good teams taking them out of their pace. This is like the Toronto Raptors taking them out of their pace, right? This is the Charlotte Hornets taking them out of their pace. This is a terrible version of the Sixers taking them out of their pace. Like, this isn't playoff intensity. This isn't playoff scrutiny. This is just regular season basketball, and they can't get their shit together enough to do the one thing that this is where I would disagree with you a little bit, Justin, is I think pace does usually play pretty well in the first 82, right? Like, a regular season teams can play fast and hold to that and find a style and identity in it. This is supposed to be the easy part. This is supposed to be the part that comes naturally to them, and they can't even get that right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you per se. I think it tends to be best served as a starter pack to something else. I think if that is like your main asset, I think that's when you get into trouble. They're just like a little too easy to figure out right now. And I think that might be why a team like the Raptors, who's 3-12, we should mention, and probably a big reason why Jakob Poeltl is getting the showcase, is he able to kind of slow them down and get into them a little bit.
Can I ask you guys about one more off-court Tyrese Halliburton thing that has been very prominent on television lately, which he is a part of an ongoing watch campaign for a brand that we will not name because no free ads. This is the slew of celebrities who are endorsing this watch brand. Tyrese Halliburton, one. Ludacris, sure, he's out on TV these days. Jessica Alba, the Queen Julianne Moore, and a football player I could not identify by sight who turns out to be Christian McCaffrey. What is this collection of people? Like, who tethered this together?
I wouldn't put any faith in whatever Halliburton is doing with style.
This is
so the
his
fact
fault?
that someone is paying him in order to be stylish is just a problem in and of itself.
I'm just seeing him and Julianne Moore like winking at each other, and I'm like, what world do I live in?
Sounds like the cross section of your two things. I think
really
in a way
is.
that nothing else would represent. Yeah,
I'm not mad about it. I'm just confused by it.
Yeah.
Halliburton has made a concerted effort to get more attention on himself, more eyeballs on himself. And, that can be good for your career to like be more visible. You get more brand endorsements, more money outside of your NBA contract. Plus, it's nice. Being a celebrity is nice. You show up to a restaurant and they're like, oh shit, we was going to throw you in the back. We didn't know who the hell Halliburton is. Now that you're here, we're going to give you our best. Like, it's nice. I get it. On a certain level, it just looks nasty when you're going 1 for 7 in losses and scoring 4 points in a game your team desperately needed you to be a way better offensive player. A lot of it is optics, man.
Don't show up like a newsboy from the fucking 1960s before you get blown out by the Raptors. How about that? I was gonna mention the Knicks here.
He's a paper
but I think
boy.
I was going to mention the Knicks here. I don't think I'm ready to pull that one back. I was way over my skis suggesting that they might be in the finals this year. That seems unlikely at best. But I think they're on the path to being the team that I think we all kind of expected. Like OG's been very good. Like Cat has been really, really good offensively. Obviously Bridges has had his weird start, but I think he's kind of rounding back into what you would need from it at this point. Maybe not 5 first-round picks good, but I don't know. There's enough to like here where they're like on watch in the same way like the Spurs are, because we did have a big old bet about the Spurs making the play-in. I think the Spurs are in the mix there. I think they still might prove me right. So
you can't
once again,
justify your Rockets
takes.
take through the Spurs. Like I won't allow you to launder it that way.
The Rockets component was wrong, but I do think the Spurs will be in the play-in mix.
We need to review the tape to see if the bet was just the Spurs or if the Spurs would have a better record than the Rockets.
I don't even think you remembered what the bet was.
I didn't even know we made a bet until you told me. So now I need it in writing. I need like a full confirmation of what these terms were.
My understanding was the Spurs making the play-in was the only part of the bet. So
okay.
I still feel pretty good about that. Wemby, he needs to get healthy soon, but seems like he's figuring out the offensive side of things in the same way he did defensively last year. He just seems to process mistakes really quickly in a way that's like kind of concerning for the rest of the league.
Yeah.
All right, last one. Whose stock are you buying low on from this point forward?
Mikal Bridges. I understand that everybody's like, I think killing him rightfully. I think my man Fred Katz said he's shooting 47% on corner threes. We don't want to quote what he's shooting on above the break, but listen, he's making the corner three, which is a shot they're going to need from him. He's making his mid-rangers. He's not getting to the line for anything, which is like, I think the offensive stuff, I thought it was going to take a while to figure it out. I just think like, look, don't be all NBA defense, cool. But we need to figure out a way that him, OG, Josh Hart, and Towns are in unison on the defensive floor. And I have to believe that they can be better than 21st in the NBA. And I think, and I have to believe that Mikal Bridges can be better than terrible on defense. Like, I have to believe that. And so that's why I'm buying his stock at its lowest. I thought about the Bucks, but like Middleton and his 2 bad feet, I don't know how much better he's really going to make things. He's still going to be horrible at defense. But I think Mikal Bridges is safe to say he has to be way better than what he's shown so far.
Yes. It's just been so inexplicable with Mikal that I can't help but think he will be better. The shot, as we said, the shot has already started to turn a little bit. I think the defense as a team, as you mentioned, will turn overall. Ultimately, you're still going to be a team that is playing Karl Anthony Towns in the middle, and there are limitations that come with that. But what you can be as a wing group, and in particular, I think you hit the nail on the head with the connectivity of those players just has to be better. And I think over the course of a season naturally will be. Like, these are guys who are figuring out how to play alongside one another, how to complement each other, how to pick up the slack when one guy isn't doing exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. Those habits are going to become a little bit cleaner and easier by March and April. And that's where I would expect Mikal Bridges is going to be a meaningful NBA player, if not everything that they need him to be all the time.
Yeah, we're also far enough away from seeing Mitchell Robinson last that I'm starting to convince myself that he is the solution to the rim protection problems. Like the fact that he is perpetually injured.
Yeah.
And even when he is playing is kind of like taking shots on Instagram at the team. Like, let's just forget all that. We'll see if he even does come back and is healthy and can play next to Towns and they have enough offense to support him. I think there's a good chance that happens. I think it's more of like a look rather than their base unit. I still think the starting 5 that they're trotting out will be what they close with, if not start with. But him in the mix, I think, might solve things in a way that gets them to where they need to go long term. Like, they just need the big old look when they face a big old team. And so for that reason, like, yeah, there's enough here to like, OG's been really good offensively. How much you want OG to do offensively is like always a problem. But when he's gotten it, I think he's been the best version of that sort of player than he has been even in like his best Raptors days, frankly.
Well, I don't think any of us are worried about the offense. Like, the Knicks are an incendiary offensive team. They just need to figure out what the balance of their defense is going to be, and especially what it's going to be against the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Like, not just the Celtics now, but you got to be able to keep up with the movement of the Cavs and the dynamism that they've layered into the way that they attack. That's harder and harder to do, not just with guys like Cat who are covering space or defending the rim or whatever he's asked to do. But if you want to throw Mitchell Robinson into that mix too, like now he's in the blender. And it's one thing if he's only guarding Jared Allen, but if he's being pulled out to the perimeter, I know he's a guy who can block threes pretty effectively. He also picks up so many fouls. Sometimes he can only play like 18 minutes in a game. So all of that is going to be a part of a very complicated puzzle, but one that I think the Knicks will be better at solving in a couple months.
Also the offensive rebounds.
Yep.
Will juice the offense in a way that it probably doesn't need to be juiced, but there's an extra component to it. I have the Grizzlies because I feel like even though they've been injured.
What's the buy low on a team that is already very good?
Well, they're 500 at this point, 9-7. They've played probably below the optimist view of them going into the season. Ja has been hurt, obviously. I mean, it feels like Smart is in and out of the lineup pretty much every night. They've had a lot to disrupt what's going on there, but they didn't start particularly well. It seemed a little disjointed. It seemed like they were trying to figure things out with their full complement of guys, and they have about as deep of a roster as like any team in the league. It's really them and probably the Warriors and the Thunder, but I do see a pathway where when Ja comes back that this could be pretty good. Like I'm talking like top 4 in the West sort of good. And that's a pretty thick competition if we think the Rockets are going to stick there, especially. I just like what they have. They have guys who will fall naturally into roles when Ja comes back. We talked about Scottie Pippen last week. Jay Huff, I think, is like really good. Jalen Wells, I think, is also really good as a rookie. Like, there's just a lot to like with this team, which is typically what we say about them. But adding the little spice there to kick it up a notch in Ja, I think, especially because he's been in distribution mode this season, and I think that behooves trying to make sense of all these guys, Bane and all these guys back, Jaren Jackson with this extra dimension to him after last season. Like, I think they're going to flow in a way that I am optimistic that they could be in the mix here, if not in contention, like title contention, then definitely in that next tier.
Yeah, they have a really good mix of obviously Ja's kind of high-end athletic pop when he comes back, plus all of the kind of tangential benefits of last season, and Jaren Jackson Jr. being kind of at the top of the list in terms of, Justin, I know you've been on too, his ball handling this season, the way he's attacked the basket off the dribble against bigs and smalls alike has been really meaningful. Taking everything you were able to develop last year in what was kind of a lost season and pulling it into this new version of the Grizzlies, all the depth that we talked about, to the point that there are guys on this team who are popping who I just did not even count on to pop. Like Jake LaRavia has had really good games, and like I don't even know quite how he does it or what he does, and yet he figures it out and finds a way to contribute to the flow of the offense. Like there are just rotation players sprouting up everywhere for the Grizzlies in a way that is really impressive. And when you have to put everyone back in the roles and everyone back in the box, like the one game where you really need these guys coming off the bench to have a meaningful impact, they're going to be prepared to do it. And so I just really like the overall layout of that kind of team.
Yeah, I can't wait till they get all of their guys back. Because I think what will make the Grizzlies super dangerous is that they can't put bad lineups out there when they have their full rotation. Like even when, they're letting their starters rest, it's just high quality at all the positions, which, you can't say for a team like the aforementioned Knicks, right? Like there are lineups where it's just like, holy hell, why is this guy getting NBA minutes? And there's a lot of them throughout the course of a game. Memphis, when they have their full complement of guys, that will not be the case. And I think that's what's going to lift them through the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, Smart basically hasn't played for this team, and I kind of start to wonder if like he might not matter all that much. Like I think at the end of the day, like Santi Aldama is going to be starting an NBA Finals game, and we're like, wait, what just happened? Because he's always there to start. But yeah, I just like what they have right now.
That's been my entire career, is just be the Santi Aldama, wait for the other people to fall out of the mix, and I'm just gonna jump in. I'm here, guys. I'm around.
You're knocking on your neighbor's doors. Can I interest you in Santi Aldama, the Church of Aldama?
I definitely took that brochure. I signed up for that particular church and service. God bless all of us. Yeah. I am buying low on a player who had a tough postseason run, a crummy stint in the Olympics, an underwhelming start to this season. I have not given up on Jamal Murray, and I will not give up on Jamal Murray.
Had a nice game the other day. Yep.
He did finally have a nice game against Memphis without Nikola Jokic in the mix, a rare win without Jokic. I kind of wonder if, given the season he's had, where he's looked also very tentative, also looked kind of withdrawn for Jamal Murray standards, if these games without Nikola might wind him up a little bit, and get him into a more aggressive space as a scorer where the Nuggets frankly need him to be. But ultimately, I just think I trust who he can be in big games, and I trust that he can be better than the baseline of what we've seen over the last month, which would really be just the worst season of his career, basically, so far.
Yeah, I don't know that it's crazy to say this stage of his career, but I don't know that we're ever going to see the 2020 and 2022 versions of Jamal Murray, or 2023, excuse me, versions of Jamal Murray again. That seems... Ever. I don't know that we're going to get there, because that guy was like explosive, and like the separation that he could create for his shot all on his own.
He's 27 years old.
Yeah, but remember when he used to dunk?
Dude, it's not even just
that was fun.
I
think people underestimate the fact that he came into the league with a bad will. Like he always had like some lingering sort of problems with his knee, and they cleaned it up and all of that. But I don't know that he's ever gonna be like as explosive as he was when he was 23. Like I just don't think so. And you know, like it's not like he needs to be, but I think like the guy that we saw in the Olympics is not Jamal Murray.
No.
Right? Like he's just a way better, smarter, more explosive player than that. And I think like this time without Nikola, you're right, Rob, is going to help him more fully realize that. But, you know, the bottom line is, so long as he gets to stick around with Nikola Jokic, he's going to be fine. Yep. It's going to be cool. He's not going to be asked to be Superman pretty much, you know, most nights. It's just picking his spots where he could show that he still has some of that pop, some of that ability to like separate in the mid-range in ways that like so many guys can't. And he's back to making some of his threes again. You know, I agree with Rob. Like he's not as horrible as he's shown in the calendar year of 2024, but you know, I'm glad to see him turning it around finally.
I think we've talked about how the Nuggets' lack of depth is kind of a sin because they might be wasting Jokic's prime. I think the real like practical impact is that they're not able to pace Murray in a way that he probably should be at this point in his career, like especially coming off of the Olympics. Should he have been on more of a restriction and where you're just like slowly building him back up? Because I think about in that finals run that they had where they won the title, obviously, he kind of like steadily got better over the course of the season and then peaked during the playoffs. And that seemed to be the best usage of him. I don't know if what he's dealing with is the same sort of thing, but if he's able to kind of contribute and not be the guy, not the like, oh, he should make an all-star team this year sort of guy, I think it's best for them because he has moments like he did the other night against the Grizzlies, but they are few and far between. I can't get the video that's circulating out of my head where he's just like he was kind of lingering on the perimeter, couldn't get by our guy Santi Aldama, and just like kind of kicked it back out and the possession was wasted. Like those happen more than they should for a player on the level that he could be. I don't know how to get there, but I think you're right. Like, can he just be enough of that enough times that they need it to be? Obviously, that's all that Jokic needs.
He could definitely turn out to be one of those guys who at the end of his career, we look back and never made the all-star team, never put it together for an entire regular season, and still ends up being like such a good postseason and big game performer that he has an incredible resume. I could see that for him, even with the version of Jamal Murray that we have in front of us right now. Like I still see that player in him. I'm almost like more concerned with overall the mental part of it for him than the physical part, because the issue with not being able to get around Santi Aldama, like that's a problem, but the passing out and refusing to attack in certain situations this season, that's not who Jamal Murray is and needs to be. And so it's hard when you're struggling, and especially when you're not hitting shots, to feel like you should be entitled to push, particularly when the guy over there is averaging like 30, 14, and 12, right? Like that is a hard lever to pull to say, this is my time when we could just run through Nikola for another possession. But the Nuggets are not going to win anything if it's not Jamal Murray time sometimes. And so his evolution into that headspace again is something I'm going to be watching all year to figure out if he can be mentally the kind of guy who pushes in the way that he needs to push.
Yeah. Last one I have on my list here is I am buying low on the Wizards being the actual worst team in the NBA. I think they're actually the clubhouse favorite for the SAG for Flag Derby, whatever you want to call it. They've lost 9 games in a row. So I'm buying even lower on where they are now, but in the future, that's going to be a high point because that means they're going to be all the way up there in terms of draft odds.
I don't
That
think you're
makes
gonna get a
sense?
lot of
No, it
pushback
didn't,
on
but it's
this.
fine.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm right there with you in the terms that like they're low now, they can get lower.
They're low. They're young. They're sticking with the young guys. One thing
Like
I will
that.
say, feather in their cap, Jordan Poole, totally normal NBA player. I think this is what
Nice.
they were hoping for when they traded for him. He's just like, he's not great, but he is what I think you come to expect from Poole. He's a scorer, you know, and
Yeah.
he has legitimate juice in that regard, and that's fine. You know, sometimes that's all we are, you know? It's in the wind.
That's all
Yeah.
we are.
I
all
don't
we
see.
are is Jordan
Okay.
Poole.
Okay, now we're off the rails.
All right.
Group chat karaoke just has diminishing returns every single time. I don't know where we're going to be in the songbook by the end of this year, but
Oh,
I-
group chat karaoke. Should we do that?
maybe
do
that's the
it.
next live show. Let's just roll us
Yeah.
out there. Audience submitted songs. Let's go for it.
All right. Why don't we wrap it there? We'll be back on Monday, but no pod on Thursday because nobody has a work ethic anymore, and we're only doing one pod on a holiday week. That's right. Thank you to Isaiah Blakely. Thank you to Ben Cruz. We'll be back on Monday. A little potluck action. You love it. We love it. We'll see you then.